Inside the cave, both divers were trapped. The exit was buried under debris. The visibility was so bad that they couldn't even see their own hands. And now, they had only a few minutes of oxygen left. One diver decided to go back and search for an alternate way out, while the other stayed near the collapsed passage. 5 minutes later, when he returned, what he saw was beyond belief. Welcome back to ZIM Voice. Viewers, cave diving is a completely different world compared to normal scuba diving. In regular scuba, people dive in open waters. If something goes wrong, they can immediately ascend to the surface. But in cave diving, the ceiling and walls are made of rock, and there's only a narrow tunnel to move through. If oxygen runs out, equipment fails, or you lose your sense of direction, it's game over. Cave diving has one of the highest fatality rates among all extreme sports. In swimming, 1.77 deaths occur per 100,000 participants. In base jumping, it's around 43. But in cave diving, that number skyrockets to 138 deaths per 100,000 divers. Each year, around 25 to 30 divers die during cave dives, and that's only because very few people attempt this sport. Sherlock Springs in Florida looks like an ordinary pond on the surface, but beneath it lies a massive maze. Some tunnels lead to dead ends, while others lead straight to death. The cave's depth ranges between 80 to 120 feet. The water temperature remains around 22 degrees Celsius, and visibility is usually crystal clear. It was the morning of November 17th, 1991. The weather was calm, sunlight dancing on the water's surface. A group of professional cave divers from the Woodville Karst Plain Project, WKPP, were on a mission to explore new passages and map the cave system. Among them were two relatively new divers, Bill and Parker. They were close friends, both driven by passion and adrenaline. For them, this dive wasn't just an adventure, it was a chance to push their limits and make history. Sherlock Springs appears from above like a small, 56-meter wide pool, only 9 meters deep. But the real story lies beneath a limestone cave system that stretches down 91 meters, full of tunnels and chambers that make you feel like you've entered another world. It's part of the Wakulla Cave System, one of the largest underwater networks on Earth. From the entrance, a tight section, called the Scars Restriction Zone, begins so narrow that only one diver can pass through at a time, their shoulders and tanks scraping the stone walls. But once that part ends, an astonishing view opens up like an underwater highway, beautiful but deadly. That day, WKPP divided its team into 4 groups, each with a critical role to avoid mistakes. The first group stayed at the surface to monitor timing and respond to emergencies. The second group placed decompression tanks along the route for divers to use on the way back. This step was crucial for survival. The third group maintained the guidelines, securing ropes and ensuring safe navigation. The fourth team, led by Bill and Parker, were the explorers tasked with venturing deepest into the unknown. Around 10 a.m., all divers entered the water. Bill and Parker checked their scooters and tanks, said a short prayer, and descended into the depths. At 20 meters, they met George, part of the decompression team. After brief coordination, they moved ahead and reached the Scars Restriction Zone. Adjusting their buoyancy, they continued deeper using scooters. Soon, they entered a vast chamber called Wakulla, breathtakingly beautiful, like floating in open space. Within 40 minutes, they reached Grand Canyon 4, then began descending through a narrow tunnel. Their scooters performed well, and after 25 minutes, they reached the lower Wakulla room from where the exit path rose upward. Everything was going according to plan. Noticing their oxygen dropping, they decided to turn back. But as they approached the Grand Canyon Junction, something had changed. The tunnel looked different. Silt had clouded the water, and visibility dropped to zero. The once clear path was now a brown fog. Both divers knew they were in trouble. They followed the guideline, hoping the exit was near, but soon they realized the tunnel was blocked. A pile of debris had collapsed, burying the exit and even the line itself. Their oxygen was nearly gone, and panic began to set in. Bill signaled to Parker, writing on his slate, "Stay here, I'll check the line." He swam back to confirm whether they'd taken the wrong route, but the line markers showed this was indeed the exit. He rushed back, but when he arrived, Parker was gone. The spot was empty. Bill searched with his light, scanning through clouds of silt, but there was no sign of his partner. Then he noticed water seeping through the debris pile. Maybe Parker had tried to dig through it, but there was no time left. His oxygen was almost gone. He began digging through the mud himself. Every second felt like death was closing in. The blocked section was only about 2 meters long, but for Bill, it felt endless. Somehow, he managed to squeeze through. The tunnel curved upward, and he spotted a regulator hanging from the guideline, probably Parker's, but he ignored it. His only focus was survival. Finally, he reached the decompression station at 30 meters, grabbed an oxygen bottle, and took a deep breath. Relief washed over him until he saw Parker's oxygen tank hanging nearby, untouched. Parker never made it there. If he wasn't behind the debris and not at the station, where did he go? Bill's heart sank. He knew what that meant. Soon after, George arrived for decompression. Bill wrote on his slate, "Parker is dead." George tried to bring him up, but Bill refused. He couldn't leave without his friend. George went back for help, and together, the team forcibly pulled Bill to the surface. Divers searched again for Parker. They found only his regulator and tank lying separately in the tunnel. The next morning, Parker's body was found near the upper section of the cave, wearing only his wetsuit without his gear. Why did he remove his equipment? Investigators later suggested he thought his buoyancy would lift him up faster, but he lost consciousness just a few meters away from the decompression tanks and never woke again. Years later, scientists re-examined the case and discovered the real cause. When the divers were doing their decompression stop at 20 meters, their air bubbles had collected under the cave ceiling. Over time, these bubbles weakened in the ceiling's buoyancy. When George exited, part of the ceiling collapsed, triggering a landslide that blocked the exit. They also found that Parker, while trapped, realized the blockage was at the right exit. Instead of waiting, he started digging through the mud to clear a path for Bill, but ran out of oxygen before he could tell him what he'd done. If Parker hadn't dug that passage, Bill would have died there too. Parker sacrificed his life so his friend could live. We hope you liked this video from ZIM Voice. Don't forget to like, share, and comment. Your support means everything.